Hello, General Biology, and welcome to the second screencast on Section 3.4 in our Chapter 3 series. And when we left off with the last screencast, we were just finishing up with the water cycle, and I was just getting ready to tell you, or I was telling you, that when the water evaporates from the ocean, it's going to separate the salt from that water. So it's pure water that's evaporating and the salt remains in the ocean. And this is how we continue our freshwater supply, by that process. So now let's take a look. Biogeochemical cycles. So the bio part of this is going to be the plants, the transpiration part. Any plants that are going to be able to absorb and take up the water. That's the bio part. The geo part is going to be in that groundwater, the aquifers, the runoff, and that seepage that's going to happen. And then the chemical is going to be that change going from a liquid to a solid or to a gas. That's going to be the chemical part, and even the dissolving or the separating of the sodium chloride or the salt from the water. Okay, so that's our water cycle. It's essential. It's the most essential recycling system that living systems need. Okay, so this continues with the description. It just tells you that the droplets, when they become large enough, they're going to fall back to the surface in a form of precipitation, and we know that to be rain, snow, sleet, or hail. We also talked about runoff, that when that precipitation comes down, it's going to run off, it's going to go back into the streams, it's going to go back into the oceans. Some of it's going to be absorbed by the soil, by the ground, which is seepage into the ground, and then it'll form into these aquifers, which are referred to as groundwater. The groundwater then is going to be taken up by the plants through their roots, or it's going to continue to flow into underground rivers, lakes, and streams, so that it can be part of our reservoirs that we have to drink. So here is a great illustration of the water cycle that you can see here. Here's the evaporation process from the ocean, and the further up you get, it's going to be cool, and as it cools, that gas, that condensation, is going to pull the droplets together because of the cohesive forces of water. There's a neat little application you have from Chapter 2, and when the clouds get heavy enough, it's going to come back down in the form of precipitation. The plants, as we talked about, is transpiration, and plants are going to be able to give off water as well. Even land will be able to give off water, and when the land, because land has moisture in it, that's called sublimation. That is going to be able to bring the water up as well. So again, it's cooler up in this area, it's going to condense, and then as soon as the clouds get saturated with this condensed moisture, it's going to come back down in the form of precipitation. It'll run off. You see the surface flow here. It'll seep down. This is considered seepage as it seeps down. And the soil is going to filter it and get it ready for that groundwater or that reservoir, so that we have our fresh water available. So that's the water cycle. Okay, the next cycles that we're going to talk about are going to fall under the category of nutrient cycles, because they're part of the nutrients that we need. Carbon, remember we talked about our macromolecules being made up of carbon as their backbone, so we need that carbon in our diet. We need nitrogen. We talked about nucleic acids, and nitrogen is in nucleic acids, so we need to be able to get that nitrogen into our systems. And we also need phosphorus. Phosphorus is another part of nucleic acids. It's also a part of our cell membranes, and it's also a part of ATP, that energy molecule that we need. So we need to get phosphorus into our systems. So we can't just eat carbon, we just can't eat nitrogen, we just can't eat phosphorus. It has to come in a different form, and that's what the nutrient cycles are and how we get those nutrients. So there's 3 of them, as I mentioned. They are biogeochemical cycles. They do move through the living systems, they do move through the ground, and there's chemical changes that take place. 2 of the 3 have what we will call an atmospheric stage. Atmospheric stage. And that's where at some point or time that nutrient is in the air in the form of a gas. There's one that does not have an atmospheric stage. It cannot turn into a gas. So the cycle just remains in a biogeo part of the cycle, still chemical, but it remains with the living systems and with the ground, and it never goes into the atmosphere. Okay, so in all of these reactions, oxygen is going to be one of the atoms that will participate in this. We're going to add oxygen joined to carbon to make carbon dioxide, and making the sugars, of course. We're going to see oxygen formed with nitrogen. It's going to make things like nitrates and nitrites, and there is a difference between that. And we're going to see oxygen that will join with the phosphorus as well. They combine with these elements to help them cycle through and are part of that pathway. Oxygen is a gas. It's found in the atmosphere, and it's released by plants in the process of photosynthesis. It's a byproduct. It's a waste product of plants, and most animals and other organisms need that oxygen. So we get that from photosynthesis. Oxygen is also used in respiration. We use that oxygen in cellular respiration to help us provide ATP, which is an energy molecule that's going to drive our cellular reactions. So we need that oxygen in there. So the first cycle that we're going to see is the carbon cycle. Okay, so we've kind of talked about the carbon cycle a little bit, but we're going to get into it in more detail, because carbon, as we know, is a major component of those organic macromolecules, those compounds. We know it's part of the carbohydrates. We know it's part of the lipids and the proteins and the nucleic acids. So we need to be able to get that carbon. We also produce carbon as a waste product with carbon dioxide. And as I had mentioned multiple times before, that's toxic to us. So we need to be able to convert the carbon. So this complex little cycle that you see here is how carbon dioxide gets into the atmosphere. So what you can see by this picture, our biological part of this is just by regular life processes of animals, and that were included, and plants as well, because plants will give off some carbon dioxide as well. So that's our biological part. Our human part in this of getting rid of carbon dioxide is going to be our burning of fossil fuels, fuels like coal and oil and natural gas, to heat our homes and to drive our businesses and our cars as well. So that's going to put carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. Our geological part is going to be the carbonate that's released in the rocks from erosion and from the marine sediments, as well as what's given off by volcano and volcanic activity, and as well as what's released when it rains. Because when it rains, it releases the dissolved carbon dioxide that is in the water. We've done tests on that, and we know that the water can hold some carbon dioxide as well. So that's the biogeochemical cycles of this. Let's look at this cycle in more detail and in a bigger picture for this. So this is the carbon cycle. And one of the things you need to know is that photosynthesis is the only way to convert carbon into a usable source. It removes it from the atmosphere. So let's take a look at the things that put carbon into the atmosphere. So plant respiration is going to release carbon dioxide. Okay, that's going to put carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. Farming, when we till the ground, when we cut down the plants, when we use the machinery, that's going to put carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. When we have decomposition happening, whether decomposition is happening on land or whether it's happening in the ocean, it's going to put carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. Human activities are going to put carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. Our own breathing process is going to put carbon dioxide up. Running our factories, driving our cars, heating our homes are going to put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Waves simply rolling into the shoreline will also release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The upwelling of ocean sediments will put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Fish activities are going to release carbon dioxide. They're going to go through respiration in there. Plants are going to go through photosynthesis in the ocean. There's also going to be decomposition that takes place that's going to put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So all of these are ways of putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And the only way we have of removing it is this process of photosynthesis. And that's the job of our plants. So you can understand that if we continue to cut down rainforest, if we continue to plow under prairies, if we continue to cut down trees to build subdivisions and developments and malls, that we're taking down our recyclers, and what's happening is we're getting a greater concentration of this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it's poison to us. So photosynthesis is going to take that carbon dioxide, it's going to chemically combine it with water, and it's going to make glucose. And then herbivores are going to eat the plants, and then carnivores are going to eat the herbivores, omnivores are going to eat both, and that energy is going to be able to move through the system, the cycle again. So this is the carbon cycle. Because the carbon gas can go up into the atmosphere, like we have drawn here, this has an atmospheric stage. It is biogeochemical. The bio, think about it. What's the bio part? Sure, you got it. The plants, the animals, the insects. The geo part is going to be, you got that too, the soil, the fossil carbon, the sediments that are present, the land. And then the chemical is going to be the change, the conversion of that carbon dioxide into glucose and usable sources. Okay, we're running out of time in this screencast. We'll conclude the carbon cycle in the next one.